All right, last time I told you not to leave because there was a great person I was interviewing. Once again, do not leave. I have another great person. Ladies in the house. Not too many women out here, Clara, Shih. Good to have you representing.
Oh, it's great to be here. I see some women out there.
Yeah, it's a few.
Yeah.
I wrote a little intro for Clara and I know each other for, I don't know, about a year or so, a couple of years now. So when you read Clara's bio, it is wildly impressive. It makes people who have a certain generation feel bad about themselves. And she is a pioneer in social media. She developed the first business app for Facebook called FaceForce. She authored a New York Times best-selling book called The Facebook Era. Do you have books here to sign?
I wish I did.
Lost opportunity. What are you thinking? Founder and CEO of her own company, Hearsay Social, board member of Starbucks, BFF of Sheryl Sandberg, sort of, kind of.
Is that in my bio?
And so there's so many topics that we want to talk about with Clara. And I think that we kind of talk a little bit about what Hearsay does and the application of kind of your computer science engineering world into financial services.
Sure. So Hearsay Social is a global company that's headquartered in Silicon Valley, and our software as a service platform helps relationship managers transform their social media profiles into client listening and communication channels.
That's very well said.
Thank you.
You said that about
I
4,000 times. That's amazing. I always find the sort of the daunting part of social is maintaining some corporate identity, but also having an authentic voice. And how do you help coach businesses, managers, CEOs to do that?
It's a great question. I think just like we learned email business etiquette, and it's not completely formal, there's a personal nature to it. The same goes on social media, but it has its own set of rules. So we see great variation across different kinds of firms, different kinds of groups and individuals within firms, but ultimately it's what you said. You have to be compliant with regulation, you have to be compliant with your brand, but ultimately, to be successful, you also have to be very authentic.
How do you tap that? I mean, how is it if there's somebody out here and they're listening and they want to go back to, and they say to the boss, oh, I saw this, got this great idea for you. How do you tap that authenticity? Well, how would you coach people to do that?
It's each person's personality. And we focus on relationship managers who are usually already very well-versed in expressing themselves.
Or too well-versed.
Maybe too well-versed. But they do it in person, they do it in email, they do it on the phone. Now they have an opportunity to extend their brand and extend that conversation and personality to social.
What don't businesses know about that social authenticity? So what's a don't? Like, don't do this. Be careful not to do this.
I think for any new communication medium, the initial temptation is to just communicate the way that you did before and not think about what's unique and what the etiquette is. On social, corporate speak doesn't work. And so just publishing a press release out there or having something that sounds, that includes legalese and is just clearly not from a human being sounding, it doesn't work well. And I think many businesses know that now.
How can these businesses incorporate their value system in using the social platform? How can they show that? Because I think that more and more when we talk about outreach and marketing, we're talking about not just authenticity, but sort of demonstrating a value system. How can that be demonstrated via social in a way that maybe you couldn't previously?
That's a great question. I think that there's a couple of things going on. We're firstly seeing the shift of trust and influence from command and control brands and institutions. The trust is shifting to individuals, whether it's your own employees or it's your customers. Social media now empowers everyone with a voice, and it's both a byproduct of this shift from top down to bottom up, as well as it helps accelerate that. So that's one. Two is, I think you bring up a very good point. Millennials in particular very much care about the values of the companies that they do business with, of the companies that they buy products and services from. And so there's a level of transparency that is now expected and even demanded, especially in the consumer world. And so social media is a great place. It's a great storytelling canvas for companies to showcase what they're doing, and not necessarily just from the PR department, but again from from their brand ambassadors, all of their employees, all of their existing loyal customers.
It occurs to me that Hearsay sort of sits between a lot of competing forces, right? So you've got the company trying to reach the consumer, you've got the company trying to deal with the regulators, and you have to deal with both sides of that as well as in the company, the business side, the legal and compliance side, and the tech side. So how do you occupy that space and not piss anyone off?
Or piss everyone off.
Exactly.
No, it's been fascinating for us, and I think it underscores this broader trend of the consumerization of enterprise IT. As you mentioned, Hearsay works with highly regulated companies, insurance companies, banks, and so we do have to play with multiple parties. And it really starts with the business driver. It starts with the lines of business, all of those relationship managers, whether they're insurance agents or financial advisors, them saying, yes, social media is an important growth driver. And then from there, working with the IT team, working with compliance, working with legal to make them feel comfortable and to check all the boxes. And then at the same time, to your point, we are continually helping to educate the regulators because these technologies change every day and every minute, and it's hard enough for us being in Silicon Valley to keep up. We shouldn't expect necessarily the regulators to be able to keep up.
So how do you educate them? And what do they want to know about what you're doing?
I think they're curious. I mean,
140 characters. Okay, then from there, what do you say?
It's true, and just understanding what the spirit of these technologies is and how they're being used, the different use cases, but also the risk areas, and to the best extent possible, how do we mitigate those risks?
How are they trying to keep up with it, and are they doing a good enough job?
I think so. FINRA and SEC, they've really spent a lot of time understanding these technologies. They've issued several versions, several iterations of guidelines out there, and I think they keep. It's really helpful for these companies to know what they should and shouldn't be doing.
You've said this to me that the pace of innovation is astounding, right? And so, how do you see both the businesses and us as individuals, how are we balancing this pace of innovation with privacy and security? What is it that we should be thinking about, and what are the kinds of conversations we need to be having?
That's a great question. I think that we live in an age where not only is there innovation all around us, but the pace of innovation continues to accelerate, and it's hard for society's legal, ethical, regulatory frameworks to keep up with that. And so I think the most important thing is not just wait for the regulators to figure this out. All of us have to play a role as consumers, as business people, as members of government, to understand these technologies, to use them, but then to think more broadly about possible unintended consequences and potential ways for us to make sure that they're safe and secure.
If I'm a financial advisor at one of the big firms and my firm uses Hearsay, how will my social presence change? Will there be something that I have to do proactively, or are they saying, look, you've got to surrender your Twitter identity previously, or how is it managed?
Well, you just pick which of these social media assets you want to use for business. And then, we walk them through different steps. So step one is just to be findable, to have a profile. Some advisors have one already, many of them don't. So how do you balance professional and personality? Step two is to grow your network. In the old days, it was collecting business cards from events like this, adding it to your Rolodex, maybe adding it to an Excel spreadsheet or a Goldmine or ACT database. Today, it's about connecting with that person on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. Depends on your business, depends on the demographic. And then from there, it's listening and trying to understand signals from your clients and your prospects. And then it's using social as a communication channel where you're sharing content and thought leadership to stay top of mind while building credibility.
So I imagine, just when you walk into a company and you have an engagement and you've got all these different constituencies, what have you observed as the evolving role of IT in some of these big companies? And, it used to be like, oh, that guy over there, he makes my computer work. But now, what is the IT division seen as in these big companies?
It's a great question. I think IT is a very exciting place to be right now. They tend not to be the key drivers of Hearsay, although it really depends on the company. Every company has their own culture. So there's two forces that are happening at the same time. On the one hand, you've got cloud computing. So traditionally, IT at many Fortune 500 companies, their job was keeping the lights on, managing the servers, all these data centers. Now that that's moved largely to the cloud and there's virtualization, they can kind of offload a lot of that to Amazon or to Rackspace or any number of these or private cloud providers that are there. At the same time, we are in this social mobile era where all of us, in part of our lives, we're consumers. In another part, we are employees or executives at these companies, and we live very much in this age of bring your own device. And so I think IT is in an interesting inflection point right now where what they used to do, they're doing less of, and they're being pushed more, and many of them are proactively driving this at their firms. They're driving this consumerization of the enterprise.
And what's interesting, though, is that the IT person who previously maybe had to drag the C-suite into the modern era, you say that the business now is driving a lot of IT decision-making and actually kind of pushing the IT departments to keep pace. Is that right? That's
absolutely right. I think innovation has become everyone's job, or certainly that's the case at the very best companies. And it's no longer okay to silo innovation to a single person or single team within the company, given that we live in this era where rapid change is the new normal. Everyone has to own it, and that starts with the C-suite.
When you go into the C-suite and they've bought in, how do you help it drill down throughout the organization? What's the messaging that has to happen?
There's a lot there's a lot of ducks to have to line up, but it's and again it depends on the company. But there's some banks that we work with. They'll have they have dozens upon dozens of different business units. So usually there's an executive team for each business unit. So you go to each one. You talk through the social media use case, and it's different, again, depending on the business, who that business is serving, how proactive they want to be on social versus using it more as a listening channel, et cetera.
So obviously you were a very young board member at Starbucks. Are you the youngest person in the room always at those meetings, pretty much?
Usually.
Okay. And how did that come about? How is it that you became a board? Did they approach you? Did someone put you together? How did that board connection happen?
Yeah, they came and found me. I've been on the board now coming on almost 3 years. So I guess 4 years ago, there was an executive search firm that reached out to me, and they said that they were looking for someone who was a millennial, potentially, someone who was sitting CEO and founder, entrepreneurial, and understood digital and social.
And was it out of the blue? Were you kind of shocked when you got that call?
I was a little surprised.
Do you get free coffee? Okay, sorry, that was just me. I'm sorry.
At board meetings.
That's it? I told you that I stalked Oprah Winfrey in the green room at CBS when she was there with Howard, and I didn't realize my better connection would have been to say to Howard, I know Clara. So I really blew it. So you also, the boards are actively seeking tech people and digitally savvy people. So if anyone out here in the audience wanted to start getting involved in a board, what would they do?
I think just keep doing what you're doing, and there are various board events. Because I was reached out to, I don't know how you would get into that market, but there are different conferences and gatherings, and there's a number of search firms that do these public board placements. But it really ties back to what we were talking about earlier, where not only does everyone in the company who's an operator own innovation, it's even happening at the board level because it's that strategic. And whatever business we're in, we're seeing very traditional industries, whether it's financial services, transportation, hotels and hospitality, every industry is open to disruptive technology.
How many women board members at Starbucks?
There are 2 of us.
But 3 is the critical number. I think when you have 3 board members, they found that statistically the public companies do better with 3 or more female board members. So you got to get another one. Anyone here want to be on this board of Starbucks? Okay.
I don't think that's how that works.
Oh, no, darn it. Okay. They're very tech savvy. So let's talk a little bit about, it doesn't escape me that you're a woman, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so tech industry and women, Clara and I had lunch a few weeks ago, and I was pounding her about this. I'm like, what's going on in technology? They should be leaders. What is going on, and what is the problem here in this world of technology that doesn't seem to, you would think, be very evolved about going out and seeking women proactively and keeping women, but doesn't seem to be happening?
I think it starts with the number of STEM graduates and the number of women and girls, starting in junior high, high school, who decide to study math, science, and technology. I think in the Valley, I find it actually quite meritocratic, but if you have studied computer science or engineering. And so we need more women to do that and to not.
But in other words, if you do study one of those fields, then you think it's a meritocracy, or do you think that there are limitations for women in technology that are different than for men?
I don't have a good frame of reference. I think I can just speak to my own experience. It is intimidating to be part of the non-majority group, whether it's gender or otherwise. But I think there's a growing influx of women who are starting companies, and we need to do everything that we can to employ them, to support them, to advise them, to join their boards.
What should managers or owners know about women in technology? Is there something specific that they should know that's going to be an addition, is going to be different, is just going to be something that you see as important, not just representing half of the population?
Well, women, there's such diversity among women, but I guess sometimes some of the events that we do, the team building events, the ways that the office gets together and bonds. Just think about, we think about customer experience all day. We need to think about customer experience for our own employees, and especially when it's a diverse group of employees. You were a worker bee, and you started your own firm, and you had a skill set. What are some of the skills that you have had to develop now being the leader of this company that's growing by leaps and bounds? Oh, so much. So I'm a software engineer by background, and I remember when my co-founder, Steve Garrity, and I, we started Hearsay, we built the prototype, and we said, okay, great, well, now we have to sell this. And I was like, well, Steve, you go sell it. And he's like, no, I don't want to sell it, you sell it. So I think we flipped a coin or something, and I had no idea how an enterprise sales cycle works, so I bought a book. It's called Hope is Not a Strategy. It's still sitting on my bookshelf, and it walks you through what an RFP is. I didn't know what that was. It walks you through procurement, had no idea what that was, and that's how we sold our first few deals, and then thankfully we hired some real salespeople.
That's good. But and now that even going forward, now it's been a few years since Hearsay's up and running, what is hard about leadership? What's the part that you're like, oh, this is so much harder than I ever thought it would be?
At the risk of sounding trite, it really is so much about being a servant leader and realizing very early on that it's not about you. It's about your people, the quality of your people, how motivated they are, and how you can just keep and find the best of the very best.
We're clock ticking down. You wrote Facebook Era in 2009? Is that
First
right?
edition.
First edition. So 5 years since, so much of what you wrote is fresh, and I was leafing through my copy last night. What did you get wrong? What did you get wrong about that in that book?
Well, for the record, I think I got a lot right.
She did. Everyone should get this book. It's available on Amazon. Okay, good.
But what I got wrong was I underestimated how powerful these public social networking sites would be. So I actually had an entire section on private social networks, so various online communities that brands would have. And it turns out people want to be, there's this network effect, and people want to be where everyone else is. And so that's an area that I would cut out in my next edition.
That's all right. No, keep it in. It's good. It's humility, right? It's fantastic. Clara, Shih, everyone give it up for Clara.